Everyone has been thanked today, our underwriters, me and management, but really the most important people that have not been thanked is you. I mean, it's President's Day. We're supposed to be off today, right? Buying furniture or something. So I appreciate you being here today. It's a big effort. A few years ago, we changed the name of this to the Kickoff, and I like that. That's looking forward. We used to call it a year end. It is important to see where we've been, but I always look to see what we've done to see where we're going. So I like Kickoff. I can tell you 2024 has been a big year for me personally. I became a grandfather this year. Thank you. It's a pretty surreal experience. Little Asa William Lee Cantrell came into this world in early January. So sweet he needed 4 names. My mama called me and she said, "Son, having grandchildren is God's way of letting you hold your children again." And I'll be like Bill, I'll start crying. But I like that, and so when he was handed to me for the very first time, I thought about what she said, and you know, when I don't know what else to do, I sing. And so I thought about my kids, and I looked down and I said, there is a young cowboy who lives on the range. You know it? His horse and his cattle are his only companion. And he opened his eyes, y'all. And he looked at me. And from that moment, nothing else mattered in the world but he and I, because I meant something to him. You know, I didn't always feel that way. I didn't always feel like I meant something to someone. 30 years ago, I was a young baby lawyer. And I was trying cases. And I was successful. But I was empty. I was empty inside. I didn't have a purpose. And just like the Mesa, I feel like beyond just trying to make money, we want to mean something. We want to have what we've done on this earth to make a difference to at least someone. So when I got a phone call in my office from a friend of mine, a client friend of mine, he was a banker, and he wanted to give me more work. That's what he called me about. Now, for those of you that generate business, I can give you the textbook way of how not to respond to a banker, because that's what I did. I was as dead as they can be, because in my mind, my limited view of the world, all that I thought he would have me do is just sue someone, right? Just another person that I would have to avoid on the street. But he said, "I want you to do a closing for me." Now, y'all, he might as well have been speaking Mandarin Chinese, because I didn't know what that was. And I didn't have the good sense to buffalo my way through it. I just blurted out, I said, "Well, Tom, what is that?" And he said, "They're easy." He said, "I'll teach you how to do it." Well, he was half right. He did teach me, but they're not easy. But you know what I found out? I found out I liked it. I got to go to the courthouse. I got to pull records. I was solving a puzzle. This is something that I dearly love doing. I was getting jazzed up, right? So I liked that part of it. I came back to the office and started working on, I still call them a settlement statement. I still call them a HUD. So that's what I worked on. Worked on it all damn day. But I've got it down cold. I had it balanced to the penny. And I was proud of the work that I did. I did it on a typewriter. And so later on, I'll tell anybody under the age of 40 what that is. I'll also tell you what whiteout is, because I use both of them, pretty generously. But I had it, and his customer came in, and I sat down with the customers. And you know how when you're just there's magic sometimes at the closing table. You resonate with somebody. And I could tell that what I was saying meant something. And then when they walked out, They appreciated what I had done. And guys, for $300, I was sold on this new line of business. I didn't have to go to my daddy and say, you wasted 3 years of tuition because I was miserable. I thought, I'm reborn. I can do something. If I can do this and feed my family, this is what I'm going to do. That's a pretty good story, right? Pretty feel good. And that's where, when I was first thinking about this, that's where I wanted to go. I would just want to talk about how important we are in the real estate transaction, the people that we impact from a day to day. All those things are true. That's not fair to you. That minimizes. That doesn't tell the true story of how important you are. Dare I say, the foundation really of a financial economic system that is the envy of the world. A few years ago, I had a telephone conversation. He's not here, at least he was. Troy McFarland, he's in our Chattanooga office. He and I were talking. And we were talking about our offshore vendors that did some searches. I see the look. Yeah, I had it too. We were frustrated. We were talking, trying to figure out a problem. And I said, Troy, I've got to figure that out. I know how to solve this problem. It's the language barrier. If we could just eliminate the language barrier, all this would be better. Troy's very thoughtful. He doesn't blurt out things like Chris does. He sat there for just a moment, and he said, I disagree. What do you mean? You disagree with me? He said, Chris, the people that we employ have no concept of owning property. Well, you could have knocked me over with a feather because that didn't register with me. He said, no, they don't have the same rights. They don't experience owning property like you and I. So I just kind of filed that away, right, in my mind. Just one of those things that go, okay, that makes sense, I understand, because we talked further about that. And it really bubbled up to the surface. Last year, I was reading a book called The Mysteries of Capital by a doctor of economics from Peru. His name is Hernando de Soto. Okay, get it out of your system and laugh, because that's what I read for pleasure. But in that book, Dr. de Soto and his team of economic, social scientists, I guess you will call it, have made it their life mission to study different economic systems in order to lift the poor out of poverty. That's what they do. Not just in Latin America, not just in America, all over the world. He studies different societies, different forms of government, on how they conduct their economy. And there's some pretty eye-popping numbers that came from this book. And the first one was, there are 2 billion people on this planet that can own property like you and I know and recognize. Where's Ashley Morgan? I know she's grinning somewhere. That's a lot of title policies, isn't it? Right? 2 billion people? Come on. 2 billion people that can own property like you and I. Well, this number is dwarfed by the 5 billion people on this planet that cannot. They don't experience the same rules and systems like you and I. Over 2.5 times the number of people cannot own property like you and I experience and knowledge and expect. And the scientists further went and studied and said, if we had a magic wand, we don't, but if we had a magic wand and we could flip the script and cause those people to be able to own property, well, that would unlock that mystery. That would unlock over $9 trillion. That's a T, Brandon, a T. That's a lot of money, isn't it? $9 trillion into the world's economy. on a conservative case. These social scientists said that would do more for the poor than all the humanitarian charities combined. Can you imagine? Now, how did we get here? How did we get so lucky? Well, in a lot of ways, it wasn't. We kind of happened into it. We kind of backed into it. We experienced lagniappe. Lagniappe is a Cajun term, and it means an unexpected, you know, you're an LSU girl, an unexpected but pleasant surprise. So let's just take lagniappe, put it in a box. We'll sit over here for a minute, okay? We'll come back to it. When I was a boy, I loved history. Still do. Love history. I especially love the founding of our country. I'm an unapologetic patriot. I love it. I love all things American. But I love the idea of these folks just breaking out over the ocean and starting this country. And you know, I always thought that they just landed here and they saw the vast riches and that we're a rich country because of all these great natural resources that we have. And we do. We still do. We still have a lot of natural resources. But that's not why we're rich. Natural resources, by their very definition, run out. They're finite. You want to take a guess why we're rich? Take a look around. We're rich because of you, and you, and you. But more importantly, what rests up here in our mind, the ideas, those are infinite. That is why we're a rich country. Now let's stay with our founding forebears for just a minute, because there's a quaint notion that our forebears came over to escape religious persecution. That doesn't begin to tell the story. The DNA in our forebears that is running through all the blood here today and imprinted on you, they came over to decide where they wanted to worship, but really what they wanted was to be the captains of their own destiny. They wanted to decide their own fate. And so that means they may not go to church. They may not worship anyway. They did not want to be told what to do. They wanted to determine how their lives were going to turn out. Now, to do that, they understood that one of the basic tenets of building wealth was owning property. They didn't invent the concept of owning property. The countries that they came from all had property rights, but it was in the few. It depended on what your last name was, who your family was, how much money you had. So no, our forebears didn't invent the concept of property ownership, but we democratized it. We decided if you had the grit and the determination that you could own property. So we took it from an aristocracy and we created a meritocracy. Now, I could complicate it. Tim back here can tell it better than I can because that's what he does all the time, to search property. It's not real complicated. In order for us to have true property rights, we needed really one thing. You know what that one thing is? We just needed all to agree that we were going to put all the records here. We weren't going to have different families that you had to go ask about whether they inherited it or not. We're going to have one common public record ownership. That's it. We as a community would guard those. We would say, Dakota owns this, Sean owns that, I bought it from this person, Bill sold it to me, and we were going to rule it by laws, not by how strong you are or not by how much money you have. That's it. Y'all ready to bring the lagniappe out again? Because we're about to use it. Let's get this lagniappe out. What we discovered is when you have a social compact and you have these public records, what we discovered is property lives parallel lives. Stay with me. It gets abstract and a little fuzzy. I had to read this chapter 2-3 times. Property has a parallel life. And you unlock that parallel life because the power is lying there dormant. So when I told you about these 5 billion people that couldn't own property, don't be misled. They have a place to lay their heads. They got a home. But the 5 billion people, they use property for their apparent uses. It's physical apparent use. And what is that? A home is just a place to protect you from the elements. It keeps us warm, safe, and dry. That's it. It's apparent use. It's like that high mountain lake. What's an apparent use for a high mountain lake? Well, we can swim in it, we can fish in it, we can boat in it. But you know what? People smarter than me discovered there's dormancy in there in the form of hydroelectric power. That is the dormant power that is lying in your property that you unlock. We unlock its potential, or what we call collateral. Okay? You see where I'm going with this? We unlock that collateral. It's powerful. The ideas that make us a rich country, I've probably got a handful of people that I can go to. You probably do too, mostly family members, that I can go to and say, hey, I've got an idea. Bill, I've got an idea. It's making some money. And he'd probably loan it to me. But it's limited by the number of people I know. And it's limited by the money that they have and the ability that they can part from it. But when I unlock capital, you see, something magical happens. I've invited the world to my doorstep to compete for that idea. And they come. They come with better terms, more money. See, we didn't invent banks either. There were banks, but they only catered to the very super rich. Again, we democratized it. We caused banks to flourish. So they beat a path to our doorstep to loan us money for these ideas because we have unlocked that capital. Now, people being people, those banks who were strangers, you say, well, you've got a pretty good idea, Chris. And I say, look at my deed. I got a deed. They want something more than that. They want something more than that. And they need something more than a clerk. They don't want to call the public records office and say, is Chris really on this? No. They want somebody to step in the void and stand good and guarantee and say, not only does Dakota own this property, he doesn't owe anybody for it. He hasn't sold it. He doesn't have straight air. Somebody to stand good for what it is that you're doing. We've gotten very sophisticated with how we have characterized collateral. That's not what this talk is about, but we've had different formations of collateral. We've bundled things. We've grown. We've evolved. But guys, it started with a piece of dirt. Our economic system started that way, and it has grown, and again, it has become the envy of the world. So you see what you've done? Does it ring a bell with you? Does that sound familiar to something that you do? You have underpinned a great economy. You should be familiar with it because you've been part of a company that has done it for the last 16 years, over 100,000 times. Now, Dee Dee told a little bit of the story. I'll tell more about it. 15 years ago, when our leadership council got together, all 5 of us, which was all 5 of the employees too, and we got together and we said, we got a plan. Plan of success was, we think we'll get up to 100 closings a month. That's not each office, that's all the offices. That was Mount Everest for us. And I was excited that I called Bill and said, we got a plan of action. He said, lay it on me. I want to hear it. I said, I think we're going to close 100 closings a month. Bill Haggard is a lot of things. Most people stop at visionary. But you do him a disservice if you stop there. Bill Haggard is a masterful motivator. He would have been a world-class coach in any athletic program. I don't care if it was bocce or whatever. He could have done it because he had a great eye for talent. And better yet, he knows how to push you and make you better than you thought you could be. So he could have laughed at me. And I said that because I wasn't ready yet. I didn't see the vision that he saw. I wasn't there yet. But he didn't laugh at me. He could have yelled at me and said, "There ain't enough. What are you talking about?" He could have scorned me. But he didn't do any of those things. But what he did say to me, burned in my memory, I'll take it to my grave. I'll never forget it. He said, "Son, we ain't building a country road here. We're building an 8-lane highway." 100,000 closings. I did the math. Did a little math on this. 100,000 closings, Tim, requires 30 years at least to search to ensure that. We're standing good for 3 million years of property rights. Alta says that at the very least, on a typical, if there's such a thing as a typical, but a residential loan close, a real estate closing, has about 50 what they define as correspondences. And that could be a phone call, it could be an email, it could be a text. We have been involved in 5 million communications. Alta says 16 people touch a real estate closing in somehow, some way. They're involved. A surveyor, a loan officer, a buyer. Over 1.5 million families have been touched by what you do. So Dee said I might do an altar call. I am. I'm going to do one right now. If what you do in your office is field a phone call or make a phone call, and all that other person can do is hear the smile in your voice, no matter what time of day it is, stand up, please. Nobody takes phone calls? If you have ever chased down an old mortgage from a bank that's out of business, or a probate file, or a bankruptcy file, stand up.
Sharika, stand up.
If you have ever done a closing after hours when you should be home with your own family because you got, that's everybody now, because you got somebody in a moving van and they're depending on you to get in their home, stand up. Bill Haggard, meet your 8-lane highway. Yeah.